The small chapel on the hill overflowed with mourners dressed in muted black. James Whitmore was a pillar of the community, known for founding scholarships, leading charity missions abroad, and building the town's first free clinic. His death in a car accident sent shockwaves through Whitmore Heights, but none compared to what was about to unfold at his funeral. Eleanor Whitmore stood tall at the front pew, veiled in grief and pearls, flanked by her 2 adult children, Olivia and Daniel. Both tried to hold themselves together, but their father's closed casket was a thundercloud that hung over the room. The service was a symphony of reverence, poems, prayers, and whispered sobs. The eulogy was being delivered by Reverend Collins when the doors creaked open with an audible groan. Heads turned, then gasps. A woman in a dark crimson dress, far too vibrant for mourning, walked down the center aisle with an unsettling calm. Her face was set like stone. Behind her, 2 young adults, 1 girl, 1 boy, followed, heads bowed, dressed in sharp, expensive black. The girl clutched a worn photo of James Whitmore smiling, arm wrapped around her shoulders. The room fell into stunned silence as Marisol looked directly at Eleanor and said, in a voice clear enough for everyone to hear, "I'm here to bury my husband." Olivia's hand gripped her mother's forearm. Daniel stood. "What did you just say?" Marisol turned toward him with clinical precision. "James Whitmore was my husband for 25 years. These are our children, Sophia and Gabriel." Reverend Collins sputtered mid-sentence. Somewhere in the pews, someone stifled a scream. A frail woman fainted. Eleanor, her face ghost-pale, whispered to herself, "What is this?" Marisol stepped forward, unzipping her clutch and removing a gold band. "I believe we deserve a place at his side." The ring gleamed. Eleanor's eyes darted down to her own hand. Identical band, identical engraving. Only when Marisol passed hers to Daniel did he realize the shocking detail. Same inscription, same dedication, but the dates were 5 years apart. Whispers began to ripple down the rows like a wave. The air turned electric, then violent. "He was my father!" Olivia shouted. "Then why does he call me Pumpkin in this photo?" Sophia shot back, holding up a snapshot of James tickling her as a child. "That's what he always called me. He called all of us Pumpkin," Eleanor snapped, voice shaking with rage. He was traveling. He had to travel." Daniel was silent, his eyes locked on Gabriel, who looked startlingly like him. Not similar, mirror-like. James hadn't just been a part-time dad. He had duplicated entire traditions. Christmas mornings, summer fishing trips, even the exact same bedtime story, word for word. Both Sophia and Olivia claimed James used to recite The Wind in the Willows with his silly little voices, as if rehearsed. The funeral devolved into chaos. Guests began whispering about polygamy, fraud, and mental illness. Friends of the family quietly slipped out, faces down. The press, who had shown up to cover the memorial of a local hero, now had the scandal of the decade. But amid the emotional storm, something colder stirred, deliberate, almost staged. After the service dissolved, both families were ushered into the church's private meeting room to sort out the mess. Eleanor refused to sit. Marisol, composed but unreadable, placed a leather-bound photo album on the table between them. It was filled with pictures, James in tropical locations, holiday dinners, birthdays. One photo showed him holding a newborn with Marisol in a hospital bed. He was wearing the same sweater Daniel had remembered his father wearing the day he graduated college. Another showed James and Eleanor posing at a cabin in Vermont, dated the same weekend. He was everywhere, and somehow nowhere. "I don't understand," Eleanor whispered. "How could he keep this from me for so long?" Marisol met her gaze. "Because we let him. You believed he was traveling. I believed he was working late. We were part of the lie." Gabriel pulled something from his coat pocket, a small wooden box James had left behind. Inside were 2 envelopes, addressed in his unmistakable handwriting. One marked Eleanor, the other Marisol. Neither woman opened theirs. Not yet. I think we deserve answers, Daniel said, his voice cracking. But not from each other, from him. Outside the church, a tabloid reporter snapped a photo of both families storming out separate exits. The next morning, the story hit the headlines. Double life, double wives, the secret past of James Whitmore. But buried at the bottom of the article, a final paragraph went unnoticed by most readers. Sources say James Whitmore had been acting strange weeks before his death, donating large sums, requesting sealed legal files, and allegedly visiting an old estate outside of town, long abandoned by the wealthy Rosenthal family. The aftermath of the funeral sent shockwaves rippling through Whitmore Heights. James Whitmore's carefully curated image, philanthropist, loyal husband, loving father, had cracked, and now two families stood among the shards, each desperate to make sense of the man they thought they knew. Eleanor retreated to the Whitmore estate like a ghost in her own home. Her once proud stride now echoed hollowly through rooms filled with framed lies, James's smiling face captured in moments that suddenly felt staged. In the study, she found herself staring at their wedding photo, her trembling fingers brushing the frame, remembering how he whispered, "There will never be anyone else." She nearly threw it across the room. Across town, in a stylish but modest brownstone, Marisol burned sage, not out of spiritual conviction, but as an act of quiet war. "He left you the house," she said aloud to herself, watching the smoke curl around the corners. "But he left me the truth." The two women hadn't spoken since the funeral, but they didn't need to. The silence between them was a loaded gun, and their children, still processing the seismic revelation, were walking through a minefield. Daniel and Olivia had returned to the estate, only to find the town turning on them. Former friends ghosted them. Olivia's boyfriend confessed his parents didn't feel comfortable with her around anymore. Daniel's job offer from a nonprofit was rescinded without explanation. Meanwhile, Sophia and Gabriel faced their own reckoning. Their mother had raised them with stories of James's charity work, long missions in Haiti, political connections in D.C., but now they realized those trips were lies, time spent with the other family. The children began texting each other, first out of curiosity, then need. Daniel and Gabriel arranged to meet under the pretense of just talking. They ended up staying at the diner for 4 hours. Same favorite sandwich, same allergies, same sarcastic streak. They laughed. Then they stopped laughing. They looked at each other. "What else did he duplicate?" Gabriel asked quietly. And then Olivia and Sophia met, accidentally, at the town library, both searching for old newspaper clippings of their father. Sophia reached for the file folder at the same moment Olivia did. Tension crackled between them. Olivia pulled it back. "He gave me that necklace when I was 12. Sophia crossed her arms. "Me too, pearl teardrop, engraved with a P for pumpkin." "That's not possible, isn't it?" The more they compared notes, the deeper the deception went. James had written identical letters to them while away. The same jokes. The same stories. He hadn't just duplicated traditions, he had perfected them. Custom-tailored lies, dressed up in affection. Then Olivia remembered something strange. "When I was 15, he told me about a child he had before us. A girl who died. He cried. I've never seen him cry like that." Sophia froze. "He told me the same story." Both of them looked up at once. "But there's no record, is there?" They searched. Hospital archives, death certificates, birth registries. Nothing. No obituary, no burial, no name. The dead child didn't exist. Or worse, she did, but not the way they'd been told. Meanwhile, back at the Whitmore estate, Eleanor finally opened the envelope James had left for her. It contained a single letter and an old photograph, one that chilled her blood. It was a candid shot of James and Marisol on their wedding day. She hadn't believed it until that moment. The photo wasn't staged. He was genuinely happy. The letter was more cryptic. I know this will shatter you, but what's coming next will shatter everything. I didn't do this to betray you, I did it to protect you. There are things you never knew, things I wasn't allowed to say. Look in the music box, you'll understand. Start with 1996. Heart-pounding, Eleanor opened the ornate mahogany music box he had gifted her on their 10th anniversary. Inside, tucked beneath the velvet lining, was a flash drive. She called Olivia and Daniel. Across town, Marisol received her own letter. Hers was handwritten, full of apologies, but one line stood out. You were never the lie. But they made you part of one. Don't trust anyone named Rosenthal. She stared at the name. She hadn't heard it in over 2 decades. That night, the town council issued a public statement distancing themselves from James's legacy. The scholarship fund he founded was put under review. The clinic's board members resigned. His name was being scrubbed from the civic center. By morning, graffiti had appeared on both Eleanor's garage door and Marisol's sidewalk. Whore 1 and Whore 2. The message was clear. The town blamed the women, not the man. But neither woman would be shamed into silence. Eleanor watched the security footage Daniel had pulled from the estate's driveway cams the day of the funeral. A strange detail caught her eye. An unfamiliar black car parked across the street, one with government plates. Who was watching us? She murmured. In the darkness of her kitchen, Marisol reread the final line of her letter over and over, until she whispered it aloud. Don't trust anyone named Rosenthal. And in the hallway behind her, Sophia, who had been reading her father's journals in secret, froze. Because the emblem she had just traced in the margins of one of the entries was stamped with a crest that read, Rosenthal Estates, Estent, 1882. The Whitmore estate had grown quieter, but not calmer. Grief had given way to obsession. Eleanor no longer wept, she hunted. Every drawer, every coat pocket, every closet in the house became a potential crime scene. Somewhere, she was convinced, James had left more than lies. He had left instructions. In the attic, Daniel stumbled on something hidden in plain sight. A battered steamer trunk labeled Tax Receipts, 1993 to 2010. The trunk's rusted latch snapped off too easily, as if it had been opened often but never meant to appear so. Inside, beneath layers of decoy folders and a false bottom, were nearly 30 small leather-bound journals. Each one dated beginning in 1996, the year James had mysteriously taken a 6-month humanitarian sabbatical that no one could ever quite verify. And every page was filled with James's looping handwriting in a language no one could immediately understand. Some kind of code. The entries weren't in gibberish, though. The structure was too deliberate. Common English words were peppered throughout: gift, hallway, witness, Ashford, but most of it resembled musical notations, symbols, and rearranged phonetics. Some characters looked like Greek letters. Others like Latin roots fused with shorthand from stenography. It wasn't just encryption. It was designed to be deciphered by someone who knew the layers. And Daniel wasn't that someone. So he called Sophia. The idea of working together felt dangerous, like forming an alliance in a battlefield littered with family mines. But when she arrived and saw the journals, her eyes widened. James used to leave me notes in my lunchbox like this, she said, picking one up. He said it was our game, but he always gave me the key. She paused. He never gave me the key this time. Still, she remembered enough. Together they began the painstaking task of decoding. The first break came on journal number 4, a recurring phrase, 3 a.m. Silver Waltz, S.E. Corner. The entry was paired with a crudely sketched map of what looked like the Whitmore estate's grounds. Daniel recognized the spot, a tiny stone fountain tucked behind a wall of ivy. It hadn't worked in years. When they investigated, Daniel noticed one of the stones near the fountain base was loose. Beneath it, wrapped in plastic, was a flash drive, its contents encrypted. But the name of the only visible folder said everything. Rosenthal Ledger? The next few decoded entries grew darker. I saw him again. The man with the gold cane and the glass eye. Always watching from the car, Rosenthal sent him. Maybe he's the same one from 2001? I need to fake the report. If they know about the real crash, I'm finished. They know about Eleanor. Marisol's in danger now too. I should have run when I had the chance. But I couldn't leave them. Any of them. If the children find these journals, they'll find the pattern. Each of them was placed for a reason. I'm just the vessel. Sophia and Daniel exchanged a look. What does he mean? Placed? Daniel asked, voice tight. Sophia didn't answer immediately. She was staring at another symbol James had drawn repeatedly in the margins. A circle with 3 thorns across its center. She flipped to a different journal. It appeared again. And again. I've seen this before, she whispered. In one of the Rosenthal Foundation's press kits, on the back of a brochure. I thought it was just some family crest. They searched the internet for any trace of the emblem. Nothing. Until Daniel got the idea to reverse image search it from a cropped screenshot and found a hit. A redacted FBI document from 1998 posted on a conspiracy forum. The document referenced an elite shadow group known as the Ashford League, an offshoot of the Rosenthal family's fortune, allegedly tied to secret adoptions, political grooming, and identity cleanings of disgraced heirs. There it was, the circle with the 3 thorns. The next day, Sophia returned home and found Marisol sitting at the dining table, visibly shaken. She slid a photo across the table. It was old and yellowed. 4 men standing in front of a bonfire. One of them was James. Another was the man with the gold cane and the glass eye. I didn't take this, Marisol said. It was mailed to me, no return address. Just a note that said, time to wake the other half. Sophia's blood went cold. He knew he was being watched. No, Marisol said, voice hollow. He was being owned. Meanwhile, Eleanor, alone in the estate's library, placed the flash drive into her laptop. Password protected. She tried one phrase, Silver Waltz. It unlocked instantly. Inside were spreadsheets, birth dates, transaction records, medical histories, and names. 5 of them. 4 she recognized: Daniel, Olivia, Sophia, and Gabriel. The 5th was blank, but a small note beside it read, located, 2007, identity confirmed, unaware of origin, await instructions. In the dead of night, Eleanor finally opened the wine cellar door she hadn't touched in a decade. The light flickered as she descended into the damp silence. At the far end was a steel filing cabinet, one James had always insisted was for vintage invoices. She'd never questioned it. Now she pried it open. Inside were photographs, grainy, sepia-toned, decades old. A group of young men in black robes, raising glasses before a fire. Her eyes scanned the faces until she found him. James, maybe 20 years old, standing shoulder to shoulder with another man, his hand on James's shoulder. Eleanor turned the photo over. A date, April 9, 1989. A phrase in block letters, Vita ex pacto nascitur. Life is born from a pact. Flashback. 1989. Ashford University. James Whitmore was the scholarship kid from nowhere, a poor genius with a steel-trap mind and a polite smile that got him into rooms his birth certificate never would. The invitation came in the form of a black envelope slid under his dorm door. You've been chosen. It was handwritten, signed, simply, CR. At the appointed hour, James found himself blindfolded, led down a tunnel beneath Ashford's East Wing, and welcomed into an elite secret society called the Circle of Iron, a brotherhood allegedly older than the university itself. That night, he met Charles Rosenthal III, heir to the Rosenthal industrial fortune and the quiet engine behind the circle's modern activities. The pact they offered wasn't symbolic, it was binding. In exchange for protection, influence, and access to a life James never dreamed possible, he would owe them something far more valuable: his obedience. "There will be favors," Charles had said, his smile soft but cold. "Nothing that can't be spun as virtue. A career path chosen for you. A marriage, a name change, perhaps a child. In return, we erase your debts. We rewrite your future. You become inevitable." James signed. Back in the present, Daniel sat in the sunroom, reading aloud the journal entry he and Sophia had decoded the night before. They said if I didn't marry Marisol, they'd expose Eleanor's abortion, that her father, Senator Daines, would be disgraced, that Olivia would never be born, so I said yes. I agreed to the merger. Merger, not marriage. The Rosenthals called it a, quote, domestic alliance. They said it would bind my loyalty through blood. They were already grooming the children before they were born. They tracked my DNA, my psychological profile. They knew what kind of father I'd be, desperate to protect them. And that's how they controlled me. Sophia shivered. "I thought he chose my mom out of love," she said quietly. "I thought we were real." Daniel looked at her. "We are. We have to be. But it wasn't his choice. It was theirs." Back at the brownstone, Marisol was flipping through an old box of documents when she found something she'd forgotten existed. A letter from Charles Rosenthal, dated October 2000, congratulating her on her pregnancy with Sophia. "You've done well. She will be watched over. James must remain unaware of the second clause. Do not open envelope 3 until instructed." Beneath it was a sealed envelope marked 3. She opened it. Inside was a typed document. Legal. Binding. A clause naming the Rosenthal Trust as partial guardians of all of James Whitmore's offspring, should he die under, quote, suspicious or classified circumstances. They'd planned for his death. Long ago. In Eleanor's study, Olivia held up a framed picture that had sat on the mantel for years. It was a photo of her parents at a gala in 1998. In the background was a man with an eye patch and a gold cane, just barely visible in the crowd. The same man in Marisol's mystery photograph. She scanned the photo into her computer and enhanced it. His face became clearer. A match. Alaric Rosenthal, Charles's older brother. Presumed dead in 1995 under mysterious circumstances. But clearly, very much alive. She emailed the image to Daniel and Sophia. They were starting to put the web together. Sophia returned to the attic. Something had been nagging her. The journals were numbered chronologically, but number 12 was thinner than the others. Tucked between the pages was a photograph she hadn't seen before. It was a baby, wrapped in hospital blankets, a note scrawled on the back. No birth certificate, no trail, Rosenthal bloodline confirmed. Placed per protocol. She showed it to Daniel. "That's not any of us," he said. "Then who is it?" Later that night, Daniel's phone buzzed. An anonymous number. A voicemail, just 5 words. "I am the 5th heir." He replayed it 3 times. The voice was distorted, but somehow familiar. At a private psychiatric clinic just outside of Boston, a nurse filed away the day's paperwork. She paused at the folder marked Patient 18R07. It contained a birth certificate with no name, only a photo. The man's eyes stared back blankly from his cot, muttering one name over and over again. James. James, pact not done. Outside the clinic, a luxury car waited with tinted windows. Inside sat a woman in black, her hands gloved, a Rosenthal signet ring flashing as she adjusted the rearview mirror. She smiled. Soon. 3 weeks after the funeral, the legal reading of James Whitmore's will was expected to bring closure. Instead, it detonated a bomb. The Whitmore estate's lawyer, Harold Prescott, an old family friend, had prepared everyone for what they assumed would be a straightforward document. Eleanor and Marisol splitting the assets equally, with the children inheriting fixed trusts. An awkward arrangement, yes, but legally clean. He never got the chance to read it. That morning, an anonymous courier delivered a thick manila envelope to the county courthouse. No return address. Inside was a single sheet of parchment. Elegant, unweathered, and notarized. A third will, stamped and dated 3 months before James's death. Prescott's hands trembled as he read it aloud before both families, and a handful of curious reporters lurking outside the hearing room. I, James Roscoe Whitmore, being of sound mind, declare this to be my final and overriding testament, superseding all prior wills. My estate is to be divided equally among my 5 children, Daniel, Olivia, Gabriel, Sophia, and one whose name must remain redacted herein for their own protection until my instructions are fully carried out. Gasps, then silence. 5 children? The room erupted. There must be a mistake, Eleanor barked. Marisol looked stricken, clutching Sophia's hand. This wasn't part of the trust. Prescott cleared his throat, visibly sweating. This will is legally binding. It has a valid notary seal and matches James's known handwriting. The 5th heir's name is, for now, concealed behind a court-ordered redaction. We are attempting to locate the presiding judge. Someone whispered, "Redacted? Who gets to do that in a will?" Sophia's face had gone pale. This is controlled, like the Rosenthal clause. Daniel's eyes narrowed. The 5th heir. That voicemail. They knew. In the chaos that followed, Eleanor disappeared from the room. Minutes later, she was found in the courthouse parking lot, chain-smoking, a habit she'd supposedly kicked 2 decades ago. Marisol followed her out. "You knew something," she said flatly. Eleanor stared at the clouds. He always swore we had no secrets left. But now I wonder if he told me that just to keep one more. Marisol tilted her head. "What are you not saying?" Eleanor didn't speak for a long moment. Then, "I had a child before Daniel. With someone else. I gave her up. Closed adoption. No paper trail. Only James knew." Marisol's jaw tightened. "You think she's the 5th? "I don't know what to think anymore," Eleanor whispered. Meanwhile, back at the Whitmore estate, Daniel and Sophia broke into James's old, locked desk drawer. Inside, a digital voice recorder. When they played it, James's voice came crackling through. "If you're hearing this, then the will has been read and the 5th name has not. That's by design. They were never meant to be found, until now. The 5th is not an accident. They are the Rosenthal's greatest mistake. And our only weapon." Sophia stared at the recorder. "He wanted us to find them. He built all of this to force us into it. You'll know them when you see them," James continued. "They'll have my eyes, but not my blood." That night, Gabriel, Marisol's son, was snooping through his father's old home office when he found a sealed envelope taped behind a framed family portrait. Inside was a page torn from one of James's journals. 1997. They called her Petra at the agency. That's not her name anymore. They placed her with a diplomat. Off books. Tracked through Rosenthal proxies. She's the failsafe. If anything happens to me, she'll remember eventually. I had to bury the clue in plain sight. On the back of the page, a riddle. Born between countries, raised without flags, forgotten in daylight, protected in tags. When the 5th awakens, the storm begins. Find the girl with the name that spins. Gabriel read it twice, then reached for his laptop. He started cross-referencing international adoption records, black market orphanages, even Rosenthal-affiliated charities. One name kept popping up. Petra Foundation, a wellness NGO dissolved in 2007 after a scandal involving child trafficking, but never fully prosecuted. One of the board members? Alaric Rosenthal. Back at the estate, Olivia opened a letter addressed to her that had arrived in that same anonymous courier drop. Inside was a photograph, grainy, zoomed in from a security camera. A young woman walking through a park in Prague. Behind her, just out of focus, was James Whitmore. The timestamp, 2 months before his accident, written on the back in James's looping script. She doesn't know who she is yet, but they will come for her soon. Prescott called the next morning with another update. The judge who authorized the redacted name had just been found, dead, suicide, no note. His office had been cleared out, every file burned. Only one thing remained, a shred of scorched paper, partially legible. It read, "Whitmore, Petra alive." In a luxury apartment in Lisbon, a young woman named Amara Dale stood staring at herself in the mirror. She touched the silver chain around her neck. The tag on it bore no name, just a 3-thorned circle. And behind her, in the reflection, a figure moved, watching. The first strange thing was the mailbox. One morning, Eleanor walked down the long gravel drive to find the front panel torn open, its contents shredded, the hinges bent as if twisted by hand. At first, she thought it was a bear, or vandals. Then she noticed the single item left untouched, a postcard, blank, except for a symbol scrawled in thick ink. A 3-thorned circle. The same sigil James had doodled in the margins of his journals. The Rosenthal emblem. A family crest from nowhere, buried in centuries of off-the-record power. Eleanor clutched the postcard in her hand. She didn't tell the others. Not yet. That night, it got worse. From the second-floor bedroom, Daniel looked out the window just before midnight and caught sight of a shadow moving through the woods beyond the property. At first, it seemed like nothing more than wind or deer. But then the motion stopped. A figure stood just beyond the tree line. Tall. Motionless. Watching the house. Daniel ran downstairs, threw open the back door, and stormed into the cold night air, flashlight in hand. But by the time he reached the edge of the woods, the figure was gone. No footprints, no broken branches, just a fresh cigarette, still lit, smoldering in the grass. Security cameras were installed the next morning. Marisol hired a private investigator to monitor the perimeter. The first night of footage was uneventful. The second night changed everything. Sophia and Daniel reviewed the motion-triggered alerts at 3 a.m. They watched in silence as a figure walked directly up to the house, slow, deliberate, and stopped just outside the living room window. He turned his face toward the glass. Even in the grainy night vision, there was no mistaking the features. It was James, alive, or someone who looked exactly like him. Daniel froze the frame. "He's dead. I saw the autopsy report. That's not possible." Sophia leaned forward. "Unless that wasn't him in the car." Later that week, Marisol received a call from the state medical examiner's office. An anonymous tip had prompted a review of James's death certificate. 2 unsettling anomalies emerged. The dental records had been matched, using predated scans never officially filed. The crash site body had no surgical scar on the left shoulder. James had a rotator cuff repair in 2017. Marisol slammed the phone down. They buried the wrong man. Meanwhile, Gabriel, ever the skeptic, took matters into his own hands. He returned to the crash site, deep in the back roads of the Catskills, and located the tree marked in the police report. Though much had been cleared, a few shards of the burned vehicle remained. But something caught his eye, a strip of canvas buried beneath the dirt. He pulled it out. It was part of an old duffel bag, blackened by fire with initials stitched into the underside. A W, not J.W. Gabriel stared at it. Who the hell was a W? Back at the estate, Sophia finally confronted Eleanor. "You knew James had a brother, didn't you?" Eleanor didn't deny it. "He told me he died when they were teenagers. Fell through the ice during a winter trip. There was no body, but it was ruled accidental. No funeral, no obituary. James never spoke of him again. Sophia handed her a grainy photograph. It was from a psychiatric clinic security camera in Boston, dated 2 weeks ago. The man inside had James's face, only hollow, eyes clouded with trauma, one hand pressed to the glass, repeating something inaudible. A lip reader translated the footage. "I'm not him. I'm not James. I'm Arthur. Arthur Whitmore." James's twin. The secret kept buried for decades. Daniel found a single reference to him in one of the journals. Barely legible, hidden inside a margin. "If they come for me, they'll use him. Same face, same voice, but not the same soul. He was always the better twin. Which is why they broke him first." Sophia put the pieces together aloud. Arthur died in the crash. James faked his own death. Switched places. The Rosenthals would assume the body was his. "But why?" Daniel asked. "Why disappear now?" Sophia looked at him. "Because he's setting the final trap. And Arthur may be the bait." Later that evening, Olivia returned from a walk and found a package on the doorstep. No postage. Wrapped in brown paper? Inside, a pocket watch. Gold. Inscribed with a Whitmore crest. She opened it. The second hand wasn't ticking. Instead, the face of the watch displayed 4 numbers, 1983. Then it clicked backward. 1982. 1981. A countdown. To what she didn't know. Tucked beneath the lining was a folded scrap of paper. "Arthur remembers everything. When he breaks, the past comes with him. Do not trust the man in the mirror." Olivia turned toward the window. There, reflected behind her in the glass, was James, or Arthur. She spun around. No one there. In the forest that night, Eleanor walked alone toward the edge of the lake, where James once taught Daniel to fish. She heard something crunch behind her. A presence. She turned slowly, and came face to face with her dead husband, except he looked older. Unkempt, weathered by time and torment. He opened his mouth, but it wasn't James's voice that came out. "They made me forget, but it's coming back, and they're coming for all of us." The letter sat sealed in a black envelope, nestled deep in the lining of James Whitmore's monogrammed briefcase, one that hadn't been opened in years. Sophia found it only by chance while digging through the attic, searching for old tax records. Her fingers trembled as she unfastened the wax seal. Inside was a folded letter on thick parchment, dated exactly 1 week before James's death. It began not with "Dear Family," but with something far more ominous. "If you're reading this, then the trap has been sprung." From the moment Sophia read the first line, she knew this wasn't a goodbye. It was a confession. A plan. A warning. James had known he would die. Or, more accurately, he knew someone would. "For 25 years, I've lived with a sword hanging over my head. The Rosenthals held the rope. The dual families, the deception, it was all protection. They made me choose between exposing the truth or shielding you from it. I chose to shield. I chose poorly." The letter revealed that the car crash was orchestrated. James had discovered that his every move was being watched by an internal Rosenthal enforcer known only as the archivist. He knew the only way to smoke them out was to fake his own death and pit his enemies, and his own children, against each other. "The funeral was never for me, it was for them." A pressure cooker. "Because there is a traitor in your midst, one of my children is not who they claim to be." The revelation rippled through the family like a detonation. Gabriel, Sophia, Olivia, and Daniel stared at each other with growing suspicion. "A plant?" Olivia said, voice shaking. "You think one of us is working with them?" Sophia read the next line aloud. "The Rosenthals took one of you from me before you could learn the truth. They raised you as theirs, fed you a story, trained you to watch, listen, report back. But they made one mistake. You fell in love. With your siblings. With your mother. With the idea of family." Daniel stood. "That could be any of us. or none. Sophia shook her head. James wouldn't say this if he didn't know. Then came the biggest twist. If you want to know who the plant is, look to the one who never bleeds. It sounded metaphorical, but it wasn't. Gabriel remembered the scar. 6 years ago, during a family trip, he'd accidentally slammed a car door on Olivia's hand. There had been a moment of panic, but no blood. Just a clean break and eerie calm. He'd asked her about it. She said it was a clotting disorder. Now he wasn't so sure. He turned to her slowly. Liv, that accident in Vermont, when you didn't bleed. I have a medical condition, she said quickly, but her voice trembled. No, you don't, Sophia whispered. You never went to the hospital. Dad treated it at home. Daniel narrowed his eyes. You always knew how to find things. Passwords. Locations. You had his office key, even when he changed the locks. Olivia stood, backing away. You think I'm them? Sophia didn't speak. She just handed her a second letter, also from James, tucked inside the same envelope. This one was addressed in precise handwriting. To the Rosenthal child. Olivia's hands shook as she opened it. They told you your name was Olivia, but I named you Eleanor Rose. They told you your real mother died in childbirth. She didn't. They told you your loyalty was earned, it was coerced. I raised you with love, hoping it would overwrite the program they gave you. I knew you were a plant. I let you stay anyway. Because love is the one contagion the Rosenthals cannot code against. But now the time has come. You must choose. Olivia broke down. I didn't know, at first. But when I started remembering things, I couldn't tell you. I thought maybe I was just broken. I didn't know who I really was. Daniel stood frozen. You spied on us. On Mom. I didn't want to. But they had leverage. Someone I care about. Someone they'll hurt if I defect. Sophia's voice cut through the storm. Who? Olivia hesitated. Then, Petra. Her real name is Amara, the 5th heir. She is alive, and I've been protecting her for years. In a quiet room above the garage, Eleanor sat alone, reading a separate letter James had left just for her. It was shorter, more personal. I lied to protect you, but the truth is what you always deserved. Olivia is not your biological child, but she is your daughter in every way that matters. I made her part of our lives because I knew you'd teach her how to love. If she's still there after this, forgive her. She's our greatest chance. That night, Olivia disappeared. No one saw her leave. No note. Just her pendant, a silver rose, left on her pillow. Gabriel found a message carved into the wall of the old wine cellar beneath the estate. She's gone to end it. Or die trying. And beneath it, another message, etched in older, deeper lines. I never stopped watching. A. Meanwhile, in a stone chamber buried beneath the Rosenthal estate, a terminal blinked to life. A dossier opened. Subject, Eleanor Rose, Whitmore status, compromised initiate protocol, Burn Garden. The Rosenthal estate loomed like a fortress atop black granite cliffs, encircled by iron gates etched with the family's infamous three-thorned emblem. Every path leading to it was monitored, every room recorded, and yet Olivia had slipped inside, undetected. She knew where the blind spots were. She'd been trained there. She also knew what was hidden below, beneath the chapel, past the cellar, where a hidden vault lay buried under layers of concrete and memory. It was where the archivist kept the Rosenthal Empire's most damning secrets: documents, DNA samples, and the blood-stained ledger of names marked for erasure. One of them was hers. Back at the Whitmore estate, Eleanor called the family together. The atmosphere was taut with suspicion, grief, and fatigue, but there was no time to grieve anymore. Olivia went to dismantle them, Eleanor said, but she'll be walking into a death trap unless we get to her first. Sophia unrolled a map James had hidden beneath the floorboards of his study, marked with Rosenthal service tunnels, trapdoors, and escape routes. "It's not just about saving Olivia," she said. "It's about burning down the house they built around all of us." Daniel shook his head. "You think we can win against them? You saw what they're capable of." Gabriel, surprisingly calm, replied, "Yes. Because James didn't raise 4 children, he built a resistance." In the vault, Olivia stood before rows of refrigerated DNA vials, each marked with a family name: Whitmore, Rosenthal, Callahan, Devereaux. She removed the final drawer and froze. Inside, 5 samples, one for each of the Whitmore children. All marked. No genetic match. Subject acquired underneath, a note in faded ink. Chosen for lineage, not blood. All carry Rosenthal-adjacent trauma. All can be shaped. Olivia's knees buckled. They weren't just lied to. They weren't James's children. They were curated. Experiments in inheritance, loyalty, and control. And yet, he'd loved them anyway. That's what made him dangerous. The archivist entered quietly behind her. He was not a large man, but he had the cold stillness of a surgeon. His face was familiar, though Olivia couldn't place why, until he spoke. "Hello, sister." Her stomach turned. "No, you're not. I'm what you could have been," he said, stepping forward. "I passed the tests. I stayed loyal." He reached toward the DNA vault. "You were never meant to lead. You were meant to distract. And now, you've served your purpose." Outside, the rest of the Whitmore family descended the cliffs using the old escape trail. Sophia had the codes. Gabriel had the blueprints. Daniel carried the only weapon they'd found in James's hidden drawer, a Rosenthal prototype known as the Lockjaw, a tech disruptor capable of frying internal comms and biometric locks for exactly 90 seconds, enough time to get in, or die trying. They breached the chapel's wine cellar door, passed through a hidden hallway lined with portraits of forgotten heirs, and reached the vault just as the power pulsed out, Daniel's device activating. Inside, chaos had already begun. Olivia had pulled a scalpel from her boot and slashed the archivist's cheek. He lunged. They struggled. Blood smeared across the control panel, triggering security overrides and unlocking the final door. Behind it was Vault 0, where the truth was buried. They stepped inside and found it. James Whitmore's original Rosenthal file. It revealed everything. James had been born into the Rosenthal bloodline, his mother a disowned daughter, his existence hidden. When the main branch tried to erase him as a threat to the inheritance line, he vanished, changed his name, built a new identity. But they never let him go. Instead, they drafted him back in, under blackmail. Assigned him a wife, Marisol, a child, Olivia. And when he rebelled again, they threatened Eleanor and her unborn son. They made him build the lie. And he did. Until the lie became his life. Eleanor found a second envelope in the vault. Labeled, "Only open if they all survive." She opened it anyway. Inside, a photograph of a small girl, Petra, alive, held in the arms of a younger Marisol, but standing beside Eleanor. The two women smiling like sisters. She staggered. Petra wasn't Olivia's secret. She was hers. A child stolen. Memory rewritten. The final Rosenthal trick. The archivist, wounded but conscious, laughed from the floor. "You see? There is no truth, only design." But Gabriel silenced him with a final twist of the lockjaw into his chest, its override function frying the neural implant hidden at the base of his skull. No more architects. They burned the vault, left it in flames. Each family member took one item with them: James's journals, the DNA vials, the final photograph, the original Rosenthal ring, and disappeared into the night. The estate went up in smoke. The Rosenthal empire would survive, but its darkest rooms were now ash. 3 months later, the world believed the Whitmores had vanished. The press called it the funeral family mystery. Conspiracies bloomed like rot. But somewhere in southern Portugal, a quiet vineyard had new owners. 4 siblings, 2 mothers, and a 5th child, Petra, learning to walk again among olive trees. They lived without titles now. Not Whitmore, not Rosenthal, just chosen. In the final scene, a letter arrives by unmarked courier. No return address. No sender. Inside, one simple note: I died once, but I buried the real me twice. Thank you for digging me out. JW. And beneath the signature, the 3-thorned emblem, cracked down the middle, broken forever. The end.